Welcome to AI Design and I, the first webinar of our series. Jodie and I were excited to bring you this webinar and also hear from our speakers about their approaches to AI within design. There will be an opportunity at the end of the webinar for some questions to our speakers, that is time permitting. So if you have any questions, feel free to add them at the end when we come to the Q&A section. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Peritus, so we are a recruitment partner for design, product, software, and also data. Jodie and I, we focus on the product and design pillars of the business.
So generally, I guess our core business means that we're speaking to designers and design leaders day in, day out. And we sort of noticed that with AI coming in, some people are super cautious around topics and others are really advanced in actually, getting involved with them. So we wanted to host a webinar to bring the community together and ideally eliminate some of those concerns, but also as recruiters in design, learn along with you guys. So we've very kindly been joined today by our panelists, Karolina, Randy and Martin. So maybe just a short introduction. Karolina, do you want to start?
Of course, I can start. Thank you for having me, and hello everyone. My name is Karolina. I'm Polish but based in Berlin. 10 years of experience in leadership for a design and much more in design as well. Most recently, I've been working with Shopify for the last 3 years, leading one of their verticals related to shipping and delivery. And prior to that, I spent 5 years leading a quick commerce company, Berlin-based Delivery Hero, for brands Foodora and Foodpanda that are present worldwide.
Hey, I'm Randy Gregory. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, and I've been a designer for about 20 some odd years. I've done just about everything under the sun, from graphic design to branding, and I'd say the last decade of my career or so has been focused in product design. And more recently, I've worked in AI technologies, primarily at IBM, where I was a part of the Watson design team, and then I was part of the Watson Health team. And then I've had some time working on AI in the financial industries. And most recently, I was at Meta as part of their infrastructure team. So I've kind of been both on the end user side of the house and then also working with the magical side of the house where our engineers live.
Martin?
Sure.
Want to give a short introduction?
I'm Danish, here from Copenhagen. And I've been working at Microsoft within supply chain for 3 years now. And I mainly work with actually creating sort of the AI experiences, like Copilot, and figuring out ways to do the interaction in a more natural and efficient way in your workflows. And I have a background in startups and fintech mainly.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate you all joining, and it's a pleasure to have you with us, especially for the first episode. So let's jump straight in, and I guess we should maybe address the negatives first and get them out of the way. The first sort of topic we want to sort of explore is the obstacles and risks. So what are the potential obstacles and risks that AI can bring designers?
I don't think that there are particular obstacles that can be brought to designers only. I think like across entire industry, the same applies for us as like being the kind of the middleman between the human computer interaction, and we are designing those experiences. And one of the core values that we bring is like empathy and trying to translate like the technology into something that is like usable as humans. So we might be a little bit more exposed to that, but like all the obstacles I think remain the similar for the info. It's like that, and I think designers translating that technology and being empaths in the process, I think it's our responsibility to pay attention to that and make sure that however we engage with AI in our workflows and our process, whatever tools we are using, is important for us to actually like be that form of a sanity check to make sure that we're not just like blindly following what like based on the prompt what the AI returns to us. So I think like ethics is one of the components, like diversity, data, like with what we are feeding the data, the AI, the data, are the major factors. Obviously, there is like a concern around as a designers, will we have a job in the future? Will AI replace us? But I think like even going back to the terminology that is like in the design community and like core to what we are doing, it's like human-centered design, human-computer interaction. There's like always this human part, and I think this is unique for us. So despite the concern or like the obstacle of will AI replace us, I do not see it as a huge threat. I think like we as humans bring that human perspective, and AI is trained on something that we feed it. It's not like going in the future.
Yeah. So I think just like from a broad perspective, Karolina's done a great job of kind of highlighting that there's an ethical issue, a bias issue, and a lot of that comes back to the data that's being used and the user needs that it's being used to solve. What I see right now with AI technologies is we have this like explosion of exciting creative technologies, yet a lot of people are just like making profile pictures with various filters on them and putting them out there. And while that's fun, I think that there are just some problems in trying to make it seem like, oh, it's a magical creativity device, when we should be solving more technical problems, bigger problems. We could even start thinking of like social, political, geographical problems that our world faces today. And, speaking to like the problems, the risks inherent inside of a company, it's kind of like, what's the business need and does it align back to those pieces? So thinking of my time in places like Meta and IBM and PayPal, that was a difficult challenge as a designer. Like, we are engineered as designers to go and solve human problems. Not everyone else around us wants to, that's not necessarily the thing that they care about. Engineering people, they might just care about making the technology work. Business people may be wanting to settle some metrics that they have. And so I think there's like an inherent challenge there as designers. Like, we can leverage these tools and we can leverage the technologies and the data behind them, but we also have to convince people of the right things to go after. That's been just a thread throughout my career. IBM, I was working on tooling, and it's like, okay, well, we need to figure out what's the right data that will eventually go into an end user facing solution. And how do we make sure that the people that are training it, have the right ethics in mind? And what are our ethics? There's a whole book that some friends of mine back at IBM put together just about AI ethics because of that question. I think like those challenges are the ones that are really interesting for me as a designer. And yeah, I keep pursuing those and just asking those of the people that I collaborate with and at the businesses that I'm at. Not sure if that answers your question, but like, yeah.
Upwards, downwards, sidewards, from all angles, because this is a topic that's going to affect everybody in the business, in the organization. So actually bringing it to the forefront of the team. Tim, what's your sort of take on risk and I guess obstacle?
What we focus a lot on right now is the fact that AI tends to lie when it doesn't know the answer. I guess most of you have tried that. And it's actually really tricky to fix. You can tell it in like sort of the base prompt that we're working on, don't lie, if you don't know, just tell them you don't know. But it's really tricky to fix. And Sam Altman from OpenAI said in some meeting that he expects this to be fixed within a few years, which would be great. But it still brings up the concern that even if it gets fixed for like 99% of the time, that 1% where it's still lying might be that it's so good at lying that no one picks it up. And, that could bring us down sort of a rabbit hole where you maybe believe some assumption that turns out to be not true. For example, if you use AI in your design process, as we do a lot, like in supply chain, there's a lot of roles that I don't know a lot about in, warehouse, manufacturing, and so on. And it's actually really great to have this insight to say what are sort of the main challenges that a warehouse worker is facing. And it could also be that you bring in a lot of data, saying, all right, we have all these user feedback messages. Which ones are the most sort of important, or which ones seems to be the ones we should focus on? And if you can't trust what it gives back, that's sort of the biggest problem we're facing right now. Because you kind of have to be an expert yourself in that field. Like when it generates design, we feel comfortable judging, saying, yeah, this is like a design I want to use, or maybe not. But when it's something super specific, like in a role that you don't know anything about, you just have to kind of trust it right now. And that then it sort of bugs the question, like, then you need to be the expert in everything yourself again, you know. So I think that's one of the main things to overcome if we really want to use it in sort of the more insights-based way of working, in terms of not just creating content, but also having insights in how people work and emphasizing with users.
Or do you think, is there any sort of measures that we can be taking now, for example, not just using not just relying on ChatGPT or one tool? Is there anything else?
I mean, right now it's kind of easy still to see when it's going off ramp and when you need to sort of, go in and shake it, right? You can go online, you can ask users, as we still do a lot. But then it still doesn't really sort of automate that task for you. So no, I don't have an answer right now. I hope the technology improves, and I hope that it'll be better at sourcing, saying this is where I know this from, bringing up actual sources that you can go in and verify yourself. That would help a lot. But as it is right now, I wouldn't trust it 100% with those kind of tasks. So that's just state of where we are right now, right? But if we're looking like in a historic context of how fast it's moving, I just want to say that I think it's not something that will forever be a problem. It's just a matter of where we are right now.
Cool. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts, like based on what we just spoke about, whether like ChatGPT, like OpenAI, is doing anything about this. And I think like we cannot, yes, like the companies that are building those tools to take the responsibility of them as well. But I think the main responsibility should be on the regulators and actually forcing some of the direction that it's going with. And I think European Union is doing a step forward, and I think it's more advanced than probably other countries, but I know, so I see it as a positive thing. Like a big part of it will be like regulatory challenges. So what do we allow, what we don't allow, and part of the European AI Act is exactly like do not harm, right? So it's not only what problems we choose to solve with the AI, but like, we can do good with that, but we can do bad with that as well. So like kind of risk-based approach and what harm it can do to environment, society, data privacy, security and safety. And I think like this is something that we will be seeing more as well, but this is like lack of regulations right now. It's also a challenge.
What do you predict for future trends?
I mean, that's going to be one of the trends, regulations. I think right now we have like all the hype, all the tools that are coming up. Sometimes like you type, what are the best design tools for AI design tools? And you get like 150. It's like, where do I start with? So kind of limiting probably, or kind of solidifying the market. I think that's one of the trends that we will probably see. But regulations will be one of the big ones, and ethics and more conversation around this and landing on some of the recommendations. As many of you probably know, like Elon Musk also is coming into AI field exactly because of his concerns. So he wants to be like a bigger voice and within this conversation. So I think we will start seeing this much more. One of the trends that I'm particularly interested in myself is like AI in medical solutions, because that's a huge amount of data. Right? And right now we rely on single humans to kind of like understand it and read maybe our medical exams and make sense out of it based on their past experience. But I think there's like a huge potential for AI medical powered tools to see at large scale some of the trends and so on. And I think that's not going to be available really quickly. I think we will need some time to develop this, but I think eventually it will help us to even extend our life and kind of predict or risk or identify sicknesses and in our health going forward. So like this one is I'm particularly interested because I think us as a human it can have like really positive touch. We see like right now the two kind of biggest tools are ChatGPT, so it's like text based, and then image based. Video is sort of an image, but I think we have much less of that yet. I think it will increase, like a generative video. So I think that will be a huge potential. So I'm curious how this will affect maybe not a product design, like, but more marketing design. Like creating maybe tutorials or advertising and so on. So maybe even going further and like for entertainment. I think right now we are talking more about AI being used in a certain way, like in a workplace and for automating and making us more effective and so on. But I think we will see in a couple of, I don't know, maybe faster than a couple of years, but more like entertainment. So that's a couple of things that I have on top of my mind. But I also think we will see a solidifying. So probably like 2000s or around 2000s, we had tons of browsers, but now majority of people are using like 3 browsers. So I think the same thing we will see with within the AI, because like ultimately, like it's text, image mostly. And what you can do with that. So there are, for example, plugins for Figma that can generate a text. But the same thing, same functionality you can just do in a ChatGPT, generate text for like placeholder text for your designs. So like the only added value is that you do not need to leave the tool. You can do it automatically within a Figma interface. But in terms of like finding the tools, I would say follows some of the design industry leaders or companies' Medium articles, and you can see that like some of those tools like repeating. I wouldn't say do it right now because right now I would say we have too many, and there is this hype, and so there's like tons of names and tons of product. Myself, after even trying, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 different tools, I anyway stick to 2, 3. And those are like the basics that everyone knows the name.
Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. Also, I just want y'all to notice like the chat is on fire. There's so many good questions in here. So like, I think first off, like thinking about trends and stuff like that, there's always going to be different trends. Like if you look at marketing, brand design, graphic design, there's always different trends. And I think as Karolina pointed out, there's a bunch of tools. I mean, I think like, I don't know, raise your hand every time you've seen some influencer on LinkedIn post an image of like, here's your latest 150 text tools used. Like, it's all going to shake out eventually into like a series of several tools. You mentioned Figma. Figma is already experimenting with having AI in the tool. And then I'm looking over at the chat, and there's actually some questions that align to this. So Mikhail, I hope I'm saying that right, he was asking about what skills will be relevant. Curation. And I think that's what Karolina's talking about, is curating the tools that you need. And from a design perspective, we're going to have to focus on the things that are like, honestly, back to like design school. You learned taste. You learned the basics of like what good hierarchy looks like, what good content looks like. So when you use ChatGPT to come up with, I don't know, 15 prompts to write a Medium post, you're going to be the one in charge of which one's the right one. How are you going to edit it? When you're in Figma and let's say you've got a client who needs like a data-centric, super heavy dashboard of tons of visuals, you don't have time to like come up with like 20 thumbnails, but Figma can probably do it for you. And then you're going to be the one in charge looking at it and being like, oh, that's the one that works. Or yeah, I think of like with Figma and design systems in general. So all the companies I've worked at have plugged in their design systems in the Figma. It's not that hard of a stretch to connect an AI-enabled plugin to that design system, and then bam, you've got some interfaces. But they're not going to be perfect. So that's why curation's important. I've also seen, this is a horrible trend I've seen. I actually hate this trend. I've seen someone on LinkedIn posted, you don't need user research anymore because they created an AI plugin that just creates heat maps. Let's all run away from that as fast as possible because that will backfire for so many brands and so many large companies. But like, you know, it's going to exist. There's always going to be people that do it. You know, despite the fact that 3 of us here are all super trained individuals and everyone in chat, we're all super trained individuals. There's going to be a client who's going to go to Fiverr and pay someone like $5 to build a whole website for them. And that's just part of the world of being in creative work. It's a part of what we do. So I think like when it comes to trends, it's good to be aware of what's out there, but really think about why those trends exist. And like that's how you'll actually help your clients differentiate, how you'll help your projects be a bit more successful. In the branding world, we think of that as like chaser mentality. It's like you don't want to chase your competitors. You want to find out what your competitors are solving and then solve that better. Like don't make the same thing, just like do it better. God, I can't think of how, if I had a nickel for every time a manager tell me to copy Amazon, I wouldn't need to be here. I'd like be in like a beach somewhere, right? So like those things are always going to exist. But yeah, just like, you know, rely on your gut, rely on your own skills, rely on what you know is right.
Actually, one of the things when I'm speaking to designers, I think one of the concerns that come up to be creative, do you think that curation will take over that, or do you think there's enough space for both? I
think there's a little bit of both. I mean, you look at like artists, right? And like you look at the proliferation of AI. I don't want to call them artists. I want to call them like AI tool users on social media. Like those tools are all taking art from people who have spent a lot of time creating beautiful, unique objects in the world. There's still space for that. Someone earlier, they asked about, what happens when there isn't an interface anymore? And that's something that we talked about all the time at IBM, was like, okay, how can we solve this problem without an interface in general? And then you're like, well, what's the role of a designer? And designers solve problems regardless of the end solution. Like we look at problems, and certainly a solution might be a user interface, but it also might be a voice interface. And then what's your job now? Oh, you're still figuring out the logic tree that exists. You're still going to figure out what are the questions that a human being is going to ask an AI, and you're also going to figure out what the AI is going to say. And I think it's a mindset, and honestly, it's a big pill for a lot of people to swallow. There's a lot of amazing UI designers out there that I think they look at AI and they get a little scared, and rightfully so. But I don't think those people are going to lose their jobs in droves, because once again, they can use something to create a pile of interfaces. I mean, come on, let's all like go to like Midjourney and be like, give me a rounded button that says go, and it'll probably give you a whole bunch of rounded buttons. You're still going to pick one from it. And like, that's the role of the designer, is to look at the thing and say, actually, that's the right choice. And because like, that's what we do every day. I know my design teachers were like, sit down and make 100 thumbnails of this logo. And I hated it, but I understood that the exercise was one where, I have all this ideation in front of me. Cool. Now I can just pick out like the 10 that actually work, the 5 that work, the 3 that work, and then the one that the client liked it and the one I really liked. And I think that trend's still going to exist, even with AI tools.
I agree a lot with Randy on many points. I think maybe what I can touch upon is more the interaction with AI. We're looking into a lot right now how we can get over just having a chat next to your interface. I don't think that's the future of it. I don't know if all of you know Diagram, but they're like this startup that Figma bought, and they're looking into something called Genius, which is like having almost like a second cursor, like a second designer in the file with you. And as you design, it sort of navigates and tends to do stuff, and you can then say, yes, please do that, or like, no, don't do that anymore. I think that's probably where we will head in a lot of applications. Because right now it's sort of distributed between you need to know prompt engineering, which is like a whole new field for a lot of people that is sort of secular to what they normally do. And that is sort of the barrier right now, that you need to know what to ask, when to ask, and what to delegate and so on. And I think the future will be that it's much more seamless, that you just navigate around, do your normal tasks, and then the AI will sort of jump in and say, oh, looks like you're trying to do this, or hey, I've made this for you. Is this what you wanted? Or maybe guide you through the app if you seem to be struggling with something. So I think that's definitely interesting where like the interaction will be headed, and also is prompt engineering then sort of just an intermediary like right now, or is it something we will need in the future as well? Maybe should we just talk to it, as also in the chat bin talks about accessibility. Maybe it should just be, some talk to it, some write to it, some just use it to design with. I think there's more modalities to explore than what we have right now, and that's really interesting to me, because it's almost like a early sort of going back to the core design of what is it actually we want to do here, and not being limited to text or to anything. It's more about just rethinking sort of how can we interact with AI if we're not bounded by any constraints.
Where do you think people should be focusing their learnings at the moment that will maybe help them be more successful in achieving the job that they like, or successful in the project they're delivering?
Yeah, I have like a couple of themes in that. One is like, and I already touched on them before. I think one is like understand the basics, understand how the things work, understand what are like the most prominent tools, and get comfortable with them. Regardless, if you believe in AI, if you don't, if it's controversial topic for you, even more, it's important for you, like what you're up against. So I would say like sit with it, try it out, maybe bring it to your team. This is what we did back in January after like a month of hype. Found early adopters in the team who were passionate or interested in the topic, and we did 2 sessions, one and kind of implications, and we brought some like exercises with the tool so everyone in the team can try. So like how you can use it. So I think like that's one thing. The second thing is something that we talk about at the beginning. So ethics. Spend some time reading EU principles, like what are the ethical principles for AI, and try to reflect on them. So organization who start thinking about regulations are thinking about this, so that you can be prepared as well. And I already mentioned like generate more different parts of the process. AI tools can help you like get much quicker with that. So elevators were introduced. For a brief moment, there was a position for like people pressing buttons. So I think we see right now, if you look at LinkedIn globally, there is a new job titles like prompters, how effectively actually interact with AI, but also as a company. So, for example, at Shopify, we have, hundreds of teams, and this data is stored locally, and different teams might store it in different ways. So it's like really, it will be also kind of a trend using this internet. Yes, that might be knowledge for us as humans, but not like net new knowledge.
So, Karolina hits the nail on the head. Understand the technology, understand the ethics in play, and understand how it applies. Like, when designers shifted from doing physical design work using like Letraset and an ink, and they started moving into software, like the only thing they could do is just learn the software. There was probably fear at the time that, oh no, our jobs are going to go away. And it's just the same thing. It's just history repeating itself. So like, go and understand it, and don't go and try to like become a machine learning engineer. If you really want to, good luck. But in your workplaces, you will find people that are willing to teach you about those technologies. I was going to add in just like, there's various podcasts to listen to about AI. I just listened to one this morning. It was called Design Plus AI, and it has John Medea. For those who know John Medea, one of those iconic designers that always gives like a big tech report at South by Southwest. He's now at Microsoft, and he has a lot of really good thoughts about this exact topic. The Everyday Ethics for Artificial Intelligence book that was published by IBM that I was looking, and it was actually adopted by the European Commission, which is awesome, because I think something Karolina's been hitting on that I've been, my brain's been going off about is just regulations, because I'm in America, the land of no regulations, and like, look at us. We are going crazy over here. We've got politicians using AI against each other in attack ads, and like, that is some real stuff to be aware of. So I think something else for everyone to be thinking about is, how is AI used unethically, and learn how to spot that stuff. I think like when deepfakes started becoming a thing, we were at first, some of us were like, hey, this is really funny. I can go on TikTok and see Barack Obama and Donald Trump playing Minecraft together. And the reality is, those models can be trained to start making like crazy statements from people that you would respect or don't respect. And so like, that's important stuff to think about and to find others to talk about it. I'm sure that in all of your communities, there's probably a group of super cool, geeky people that are talking about this stuff on a weekly basis. Find them, join them, be a part of the conversation. My experience is that when a designer shows up, the room turns and all stares at you, because they're a bunch of technically minded, engineering, product mindset people. They don't expect you to be there. And I think it's great, because you're going to step in, you're going to learn, and you're going to remind them about all the humanity pieces of it. If they're not already like looking at it, But yeah, I think like, everything that Karolina said, nail on the head. Yes, like, just go learn it, because, that's what we've done with every technology. I mean, remember when Figma came out and everyone was like, oh no, we all gotta learn something new from Sketch? And it's just like, yeah, it's the same thing. Like, someone will eventually make like, learn AI UI tooling in 5 minutes, and it'll be on YouTube. Like, it'll just happen.
It just moves so fast right now that it's about catching up on, okay, what has happened not just this month, but this week. I spend a lot of time watching some YouTubers and, being in Discord channels and figuring out, okay, how can I use this to my advantage, and sort of being on top of it. This week I found a new app that's kind of cool, which creates a heat map of your landing page. So instead of sending it out to like a lot of users, it can actually, based on like all the insights it has from previous tests, say, okay, this call to action button will be the first thing they look at. This picture with faces, they will then look at the faces, and so on. Not sure if it's entirely accurate, but yet another way to use AI as for like a small subtask of your work, right? And when we talk about designers never being sort of outcompeted by AI, it's just difficult for me to find that one task that they cannot do in the future. I think for us, maybe we will more be like orchestrators, using AI tools to sort of achieve a goal that we understand. But actual smaller things like UI, UX, and prototyping, all of this could probably be outsourced to AI. So I think that puts us in a more strategic position and figuring out where we want to go, maybe understanding the need even deeper than we do right now, because we need to put that into words to an AI. So it definitely changes our role in the future. And when people say something never happens, that's always like, that's famous last words. It will definitely happen at some point. It's just about the time scale. And our role as designers will be very different 2 years from now, and probably unrecognizable 10 years from now. And, no one can even think more than 2 years.
Do you have any tips to utilize AI for applying to job opportunities, or ways in which you can use certain tools to help portfolios?
One CV is supposed to be a response to the job description, so that way you have much higher chances of being picked, so like using the keywords and so on. So my suggestion would be to actually feed AI ChatGPT with your current CV and with the job description, your CV based on the job description, so that you're using keywords or specific skills that are particularly called out in the job description. That way you can have higher chances of being picked up during CV screening for you.
Designers usually have the task of making complex technical issues intuitive and easy to understand for the user. He is the bridge between the software and the customer. Why should AI change that?
Just because like when you're building like dashboards at an enterprise scale, there's so many unknown unknowns that you can only design for. And it's like, oh, if a system could just take over that part for me, ooh, that would be great. Especially, I was working in service management in Meta, and there's like 40,000 microservices, and there's an owner for multiple services. What do they all need? And it's just like, you can't design all of it.
Based on the following roles: industrial designer, user researcher, product owner, design strategist, and UI designer, who might be impacted more by Gen AI and LLM?
I think all of them will be equally very, very different in the future. It's not the same as saying they're going away, but a designer today is also very different from a designer 10 years and 20 years ago. It's just an evolving field. And I think, well, maybe manual labor, but pretty much everything in IT will change dramatically. I don't think anyone's safe, and not even in the future, but already now you can see how apps could take over a lot of our tasks. So probably the roles will still be there, but the tasks that we solve just change. And as I said before, maybe we will become more like orchestrators, figuring out how to sort of make all these tools play a symphony for us that works in the right direction.